Welcome to the fourth edition of Dutchlink Online. And today we have Grace Kim as our special guest. Good morning, Grace.
Hello, Akky.
Nice to see your smiley face.
You too.
Well, let me introduce you. Grace is a Winston Churchill Fellow, a concert pianist, artistic director, music educator, and mother of two young children, two sons. She's an advocate for quality music education. She founded Sensory Concerts to provide quality classical music concerts for children and adults with sensory needs. So, Grace, we have a lot of things to discuss.
Far away.
I'm going too far away. Let me start. The arts sector is among the hardest hit by pandemic restrictions. And during this challenging time, we are experiencing a first-hand glimpse of what a world without live music performance might look like. Empty concert halls and silent stages. And although it's heartening to see many embrace new digital performances, which demonstrates that the arts is a modern and adaptable industry, music cannot survive as a digital medium alone. And the contribution of live performance to our city is far more significant than just the music it produces. And more importantly, it also contributes to the livelihoods of many talented Australian musicians. So, my first question, after this very long introduction, but it is very important that we know what we are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
How are you looking at new methods for survival and revival to a space for artists and audiences to continue sharing and connecting with one another? Question.
Well, this is a very, we can all agree, this is a very unusual, time and something we haven't experienced really quite like before, where, as you mentioned, the arts are always, we are creative people and we are resilient and we always adapt to any adversity and challenges, but never in a way where we are globally, not just one sector or one section of the arts. Everybody around the world are affected. And this, and not only the arts, of course, but especially the arts, because we are live practitioners. Yeah. And we do rely on the, people being there together with us. So it's been very strange and very, it's really shook us to the core. And yes, we have been trying to manage somehow, cope, but, through digital medium. And you can see online, people have been getting together digitally, putting, music together, playing together, still feeling the sense of creating something together. And I think people respond very individually and differently. If you, it could also have affected, we are very sensitive, and it could have really affected us in a way that, some people might just really not do anything for a while, because it is such a shock. And it's never nice when you open your email to have, weekly cancellations of your concerts. It can be quite, it's very hard to lift yourself out of it when you're constantly reminded that your services are no longer required. And where, and everyone deals and copes with it differently, I suppose. And in my case, I'm not in an orchestra, I'm not employed full-time anywhere. I've always been sort of self-employed and freelancer and creating my own projects. So in some ways it's not so different. in the sense that I'm not going to work. But what has been different is that obviously I can't plan for the upcoming concerts, let's say, as artistic director. So that's been quite discouraging, because so, you know, how I cope at the moment is that I try to play for myself. So some musicians cope by playing, you know, playing pieces that they've always been meaning to play and haven't had the time. This is the time to get stuck into it. I know the former concertmaster of Adelaide Symphony, she went through the whole Bach solo partitas on Facebook, just the whole complete, just, you know, as a project, just for herself, but also that was very inspiring, you know. So, or some people do something else, you know, and find ways to fill that void, you know. And so it's been, I think there's no one way how people deal with it. I think organizations are trying to obviously get their musicians to create some, so it's mainly online contents and things like that that are happening, but really we are all waiting for the day where we can actually, nothing beats live, nothing beats live music. And I mean, we say the arts, it's not just music, of course, you know, it is the entire group of society that are so essential. The right, you know, people might think the arts is some sort of museum and, you know, concert halls or something that's very might not relate to them personally, but it is Netflix, it is your favorite children's books, or it is, you know, listening to your favorite band. All those things actually people use, whether they realize it or not, the arts, especially in these times, to keep them sane and to keep them uplifted and give them energy to carry on. So we are very important and valuable part of society.
Not only that, but it's very important that we have to let everybody know that as an economy, that the arts brings in an enormous amount of money into the country. And I think it's at the moment it's about $111 billion which they bring in per year. So
that's right.
The importance of the arts should become much more forward, and at the moment the arts is not talked about. And like you, me, with the visual arts, I feel very left out. Do you?
Well, yes, to be called non-essential, really, essentially, even within an orchestra, you know, when they stand down orchestra members because obviously they can't perform, and, you know, you read that, but the essential workers, staff are kept. It's like, what part of orchestra is are musicians not essential? So it is something that it is an opportunity to really, for us as practitioners and artists, to be able to articulate and to advocate the importance in language that people can understand. And obviously economics is something that everyone understands. And as you mentioned, we do, arts contribute over $111 billion to the Australian economy. And if you compare that to the aviation industry, for instance, they contribute 18 billion. So you can see it is a huge amount of money, and also jobs. There's a lot of you know, people working in the arts sector, not only the performers, but the roadies, the technicians, the people in opera, you know, people who design costumes, the seamstress, the people who do stage management, admin, you know, everything trickles down. So it's also people, it's their livelihood, and it's, you know, it's their job.
Can we go to another question? because you are the founder of Sensory Concerts. And actually, we received a question from one of our members, Victor Konijn. And he asks, despite everyone, and probably you have to first start with a little bit of an introduction about what the sensory is, but his question is, despite everyone being different, have you found any predictability in which instruments or sounds have a higher chance of having a soothing effect on people with special sensory needs, and which instruments or sounds are more likely to upset them? That's Victor's question.
Thank you, Victor, for that interesting question. Sensory Concert, let me just explain a little bit, was born out of my own need to take my children and my family to a concert, high quality concert, without feeling uncomfortable or judged because of our children's behavior or reactions to music. I have, my oldest child has Asperger's syndrome, and, but you know, you can all sort of relate that, all parents could relate that it's difficult at times, you know, best of times, to take your children and to a classical concert and to, you know, not be stressed, you know, shushing and keeping them trying to behave in a more acceptable, traditional way. And especially if you have sensory needs where you are overwhelmed by smell, the crowd, you know, the temperature, everything feels 1,000 times, million times more, and you really can't focus on the music or whatever is that you're supposed to focus on because of all the other overwhelming senses around you. And so it makes it very difficult to go to any public events or access that kind of, you know, enjoyment that one can get from a musical concert. So my idea was, what if we try to take away some of these things so that it is more sensory friendly, where we have small numbers, so everyone gets their own personal space. They can choose their own seating. So there may be cushions or even seats or sensory sort of different textured rugs. We even have mattresses with doonas, so you can actually, you know, sleep if you like. So all this sort of non-restrictive environment, and you are also free to move, roam, you can vocalize, you can sing along. You know, it's just so relaxed so that everyone can feel comfortable to enjoy music the way they would like to enjoy. We also have on-site therapists, so occupational therapists, physiotherapists and psychologists to give support if you need it. And so that's sort of the nutshell of my idea of sensory concerts. And when we first tried it, it was just amazing, and the reactions were so positive and beyond our expectation that it sort of took off. And now we've been presenting outside our own locale. We've been presenting all throughout New South Wales, Melbourne, Adelaide. So it is something obviously that is appreciated by our community. And you don't have to have sensory needs to come to our concerts, because who doesn't like lying down and listening to nice music? So
you actually, I asked you also a question, what is your most memorable concert experience? And I thought it was when you had your performance in front of Queen Beatrix, but there is another one which is much more memorable, isn't it? And that has to do with your sensory concert.
Yeah, I mean, I will get to that, but first let me answer your question, Victor. So in programming for such a concert, obviously I have to use my artistic skills, but to bring you know, what I want to share, but in a way, packaged in a way that is obviously non-threatening and sensory friendly. So I filter a lot of the things. So I arrange the music in a way that it is, the filtering is helped so that it's easy to go in. But I mean, environment itself is already, if it's very calm environment, then it is already, you know, you can concentrate better on the music. But in terms of kind of instruments, everyone has their personal taste. Of course, there's this thing called individual taste, and everyone reacts differently to, you know, everyone has a favorite instrument or not. So it's hard to say a particular instrument is not sensory or very sensory. But I try not to program things with very high pitches.
Yeah.
Just because I think that can be, even to my, I've got quite sensitive ears, so I use my ears as a guide as well. And if, in fact, all our family members have very sensitive ears. So very high pitches I try to avoid. And depending on the venue, sometimes I like to use the venue. So there's a wooden floor. I get something like a double bass and cello, then people can feel the vibration as well. Oh, yeah. So it's a multi-sensory experience. And so it's not like one particular, it's a multi-dimensional. I try to work in a way that is maximizes all our senses. While it's being sensory friendly does not mean it's not sensory rich. I try to make it as sensory. So I take away all the distracting factors so that we can really experience the pure sensory richness of for our music in that way. I really wanted to introduce the human voice because that is our basic, you know, usually the lullabies are the first thing that we hear. You know, your mother's voice is the first thing you hear. But I've been very, very careful not to program at the moment adult operatic sort of, because that can be quite overwhelming. Yeah. Especially not only to sort of sensitive people, but I think children in general feel quite overwhelmed by. I remember my son, I took him to Marriage of Figaro, and he said, "Why are they screaming?" Yeah, yeah. You know, just the pure volume and the vibrato, I think, can be quite overwhelming. So I gently introduced the human voice via children. Yeah. So we had a girl soprano, Hannah Wallace, and boy soprano who became sort of tenor by the end of his, unfortunately. But Ben Sweeney, we had children's voices, which really worked really well, and everybody responded very positively. So it's yeah, I hope that answered your question, Victor.
Oh, I'm sure that it did answer the question. And actually, one of my last questions, because we are running out of a little bit of time, is has to do, of course, responding to the COVID-19. You and husband Tay are both musicians, and I think you already actually responded and answered this question in the first part. But how are you responding to the COVID-19 in your day-to-day life? And of course, you have been teaching your two little boys school. And did you remember a lot of history?
History is not so much a problem. Mathematics?
No. Mathematics? I didn't want to ask.
Yeah, I mean, in our family, I think everybody had, every family has had to adapt to this new situation. In our family, we live with two young children, and obviously my husband is also a musician and I'm a musician. My husband plays in an orchestra, so he's been stood down for now. So he hasn't been playing officially. So he's doing other things like fixing everything that needs fixing in the house.
Great.
Which is handy.
Yeah.
And but starting a little bit now with studio recordings, so that's been still going.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing as well. Some of the work that movie soundtracks, I've been asked to do solo works for that, so I've been doing that at home, and recording and sending it. So we had to sort of upskill ourselves as sound technicians as well. So it's been an opportunity to learn new skills as well as just, you know, practicing your own trained skills. It has been very hard to balance between family life and trying to still do something in your area. The novelty of homeschooling has worn off. Everybody's pretty exhausted. So we're very happy now they can go back to school once a week. But before that, our family was locked down a little bit earlier than official because my father has a he's on immunosuppressant medication, so they live next to us in the same sort of building. So we have to look after them as well to make sure that they're safe. My mother has dementia, so there's an added sort of element to our family dynamic. So it's full on, can be quite intense in this period. So it's my challenge is to find time for myself, but also I normally need a lot of downtime to be creative, to come up with ideas, but I haven't had that. So it's been very challenging, but
you are coping.
We are coping.
Yes,
we are getting on with things.
Yeah. And you might actually have some snow in the Blue Mountains as well.
We might get, I think it's a little bit further up in Oberon.
Yeah, so.
And these come in only groups of 10.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes.
It's just that, I mean, living in the Blue Mountains, it's been extra hard because we've just had the bushfires.
Yeah, so that's what I was,
yeah, the anxiety and the uncertainty.
One by one.
Which we were already in a heightened sort of emotional and mental exhaustion. And then just when everything was trying to get back on our feet, you know, this wham. And so it's been pretty, I think there was a dip in this period where I just was quite, okay. Yeah. But then we're just picking up again. Yeah, I mean, it's life.
Yeah.
And you know, we're safe, we've got food, we've got toilet paper, we've got so we can't complain.
That's it. Well, we have nearly come to the end of this interview, but you still have a surprise for us, and a performance of a work by Edward Grieg, and that's called Arietta. So before you disappear to the concert podium and you close your eyes and sort of visualize that millions of people are sitting in the concert hall to listen to you, first of all, I want to thank you, and also be assured that you are getting a standing ovation.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll go downstairs to my studio now.
Okay, to the podium. Off you go. Thank you. And we'll clap.